where we are seeing war today, which is the Strait of Hormuz. That is a big risk.
How ready we are for the AI revolution, both as terms of consumer and in terms of creators.
Don't ask for a pay hike, all right? You know what the world is going through.
I want to understand what is that the media is not talking about.
Belt tightening, there will be some impact on the economy.
Do you forecast de-dollarization to be a reality? Do we see the middle layer, the middle managers becoming irrelevant? It's going to take us and the world to come out of the impact, the negative impacts of the war. We are already impacted as a nation.
Without doubt. Of course, there will be an impact on GDP. It could be a percentage point, could be around 6.5%. Maybe that's the number. If it goes deeper in the year, the GDP is going to get impacted much more. India wants to hit $5 trillion from a GDP perspective. Now that certainly will get impacted in terms of timelines.
You plan things according to certain premise and assumption. How do you
Absolutely.
expect the business leaders to plan?
The water that carries the low data rate, India has got the lowest tariff as far as data is concerned. The waterways that carry that traffic are on fire.
COVID times, the tech sector did very well worldwide, unexpectedly. Now the situation is different. We are already staring at a situation where the way AI is fair to take all the white collar jobs. Today, we see the equity markets it's like a falling knife. Surprisingly, gold is also not behaving the way it is supposed to behave during the war. Is it time to hold on to what you have very tightly?
I have tremendous belief in the youth of India. I work with a number of startups. I watch what they are doing, and I can tell you, Manas, I am so impressed.
Are we ostrich in that sense, the Indian consumer, that they were not realizing what the threat is? Where you had migrant workers who had to leave suddenly and die midway in the highway. Whether you see this as a net benefit to India by the reverse drain or brain gain back for the motherland, or do you think it's going to be a liability? Jai Hind, friends, welcome to Revelations with Manas ji. We know that the world we are living in is a very VUCA world, very variable. And to understand what impact of the current geopolitics and economics is going to have on Indian IT industry, I thought of bringing an industry leader for you. I'm very fortunate, somebody who has shared coveted awards with the likes of Sundar and Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan. He's also a man who has developed not once, but 3 overseas business and turned them into multi-billion-dollar business in India. 40 plus years, 4 plus decades. That's the kind of an experience that he brings with his award-winning portfolio. The man who doesn't talk at just 40,000 feet, he's on the ground. And because I wanted to speak what's going to happen on the ground, how it's going to impact mine and your kitchen, mine and your fuel bills, mine and your job prospects, I thought of bringing this distinguished alumnus of IIT Kharagpur, Shri Manoj. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Manas. It's my great honor, my great pleasure. And my God, the introduction that you made, I hope my mother listens to this.
Well, sir, do convey my regards to her, and I hope she's there to bless me also.
Absolutely.
And, I can't tell you, it can't be a happier moment that where I'm meeting you for the first time and I'm going to question you.
Absolutely. Go right ahead. I've been in this spot many times, Manas. As you know, in our profession, we are.
Great, sir. So, and we'll talk absolutely to the point basics because you have been a man on the ground. And that's what I would expect you for the audience. There's a war happening. The world is in a state of a war for the last 4 years. Somehow Indian economy has been unscathed till now. I'm given to understand that the Prime Minister has made some statements, but perhaps the reserves that we are looking at is fairly less than what it has been not communicated or what we think it is. The normal man on the street doesn't know. As an industry leader, what's your assessment of our current situation as a country in the context?
I think the government's done a remarkable job so far, given the situation. This is not a war of our creation. This is not a war that we wanted to be a part of. This is not a war that we provoked. But yet, the economic impact of this war is very significant on a country of our size. So I think given the situation, given the fact that we were pushed to the wall, if you will, what the government has done so far has been, I would say, very good, very positive. How this is going to play out in the future, we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. I mean, look at the crisis and the way it has unfolded in front of us. We were chugging along well as a nation. We were forecasting 7.5% GDP growth. Everything seemed wonderful until one fine day 4 weeks ago, the world changed. And I think our government has reacted well. People can question whether they should have been more forthcoming, whether they should have been reaching out to more parties more aggressively. We are very clear that we have taken a position where we are turning around and saying that we need to do what is right for India. Very clearly, we have taken a position that we need to protect our citizens, protect our economy, and take a position in that direction. The fact is, you and I have still driven over here in our vehicles to come for this podcast. So we do have fuel. Yes, we are facing some situations. We will have to have some level of belt tightening. There will be some impact on the economy. But I think so far, 4 weeks into the war, we have stood our ground well.
So 2022 was when Ukraine war started. I do agree with what you said. However, 4 weeks is something that I'm not be reconciling with, that the worst is over. And you may just add to that. You also said that the government has taken an excellent, has done a good job till now. I want to ask you there, what's your first opinion as a leader on a world forum? Is government right in condemning a nation that is critical for our existence as a nation? Because we are dependent on oil, we are dependent on gas, we are dependent on Middle East. And on the other hand, we have condemned them. So you think that the government is playing a level hand?
Well, the government has absolutely condemned the attack on the 7 countries by Iran. And India has co-sponsored the UN security resolution relating to that. And I think India has been very, very careful in terms of not commenting on US and Israel and what they have done to Iran from their perspective. So the provocation, I think our government has done a very good job in terms of refraining from commenting on that. Let's remember that the 7 Gulf countries, which in a way are getting impacted by what Iran is doing, impacts the lives of 9 million Indian citizens in the Gulf. It absolutely impacts India's energy security strategy as well. And let us remember, the Gulf is not just about crude oil. The Gulf is also about nitrogen. The Gulf is also about inputs which come into the fertilizer sector. It is also about helium, which is an important input into the semiconductor sector, a sector where India is betting its future on. So as far as India is concerned, we have a lot at stake with the Gulf countries. So it is not surprising that we stood and co-sponsored with 135 other countries when they turned around and said that Iran's actions on the 7 Gulf countries was clearly uncalled for.
So in the last 4 decades, you have gone through multiple sine waves. I want to understand, what is that we are not seeing? What is that the media is not talking about? What is that your experience makes you give sleepless nights considering the situation, that macro situation that we have, but it's not been analyzed and spoken about in the public?
Well, a lot of things have been spoken about, but just about the focus and the underlying attention that we are giving. Of course, every day we wake up, we hear more and more about the kinetic part of the war. And in your podcast, you speak to a lot of military strategists as well, who I'm sure will be able to throw more light on that. I think one of the important things that we should watch out for is the perhaps changing dynamic environment as far as geoeconomics is concerned. Now, as you know, one of the asks of the Iranian government has been that they want to apply a toll tax on anyone who is transiting through the Hormuz Strait. And you might have watched the news very carefully. In fact, there are 2 Chinese ships which did successfully make their way by paying $2 million in Chinese yuan, which was facilitated by a maritime intermediary from China. Now, obviously, what we have also seen of late is that 2 Chinese ships were turned back as well. Now, you could say that that perhaps is on account of the fact that it's a very difficult war. So at times, what you intend and what happens on the ground may kind of vary. But the reality is this has actually unblocked a very interesting potential phenomenon going forward in the future, that one of the major energy blockades in the world will get unblocked if you're willing to pay a toll, and that too a toll which potentially could be in Chinese yuan. And I think that that is something that all of us need to really worry and we need to watch out for. If that happens, there is potentially another superpower who will come onto the scene in a much, much more stronger manner going forward in the future as compared to what we have seen in the past. And again, as you know, this is one of the conditions Iran is putting, amongst others, to turning around and saying if this war has to abate, the world has to agree to allowing them to put a toll.
Yes, sir, I did read that. And in fact, interestingly, the month-on-month growth on their revenues because of this toll, I was reading somewhere it's going to increase by almost 25%. Because of the situation that is there. Now, my question, you mentioned an interesting point about being payment happening in yuans. Do you forecast de-dollarization to be a reality?
That's what I said, that the geoeconomics at the end of this war could be very different. Today, we are not seeing it play overtly in the fashion that, the world might pay attention to it, because the kinetic actions are obviously at the foreground. This morning we woke up and we saw how Iran has gone and again impacted some of the US allies in the Gulf. And, that's what we really read about. But I think by the time this war ends, geoeconomics of the world and in fact the geopolitics and the alignments will be very different as compared to what we've seen thus far.
What's your assessment? So, I mean, you've seen such economic turmoils. Number one is, and this may be slightly out of your immediate pedigree, if I may say, but I'm sure you'll be able to answer that. One is that, what is your forecast of the war getting ended? Is it another week's conflict, or we are looking at a Ukraine-like possibility? Number one. Number two is, how long do you think, it's going to take us and the world to come out of the negative impacts of the war, economic impacts? We are already impacted as a nation.
Without doubt, we are impacted. When you're in business, you tend not to be a forecaster, because many times when you forecast, things don't go in the direction that you expect. But what you do is you prepare for scenarios. And I think that's what business leaders do incredibly well. I think we need to do the same as we speak right now. So if the war ends sooner, then how would the scenario play out? If the war takes longer, what could be the impact? And therefore, how do we need to prepare as businesses, as organizations, and as a nation? Now, if the war ends, and there are just multiple scenarios which could play out. So if the war ends, let's say, by the middle of this year, of course, there will be an impact on GDP. It could be a percentage point, half a percentage point, could be around 6.5%. Maybe that's the number. If it goes deeper in the year, the GDP is going to get impacted much, much more. So it could get impacted by maybe, a few more basis points. So maybe it comes down to 6% instead of 6.5 or 6.5 to 7. But the impact is really not just GDP. I think what we have to watch out as business leaders is what is going to be the impact on consumer sentiment? What is going to be the impact on inflation? What is going to be the impact on costs? And ultimately, what is this going to impact us in the medium term? In the medium term, India wants to hit $5 trillion from a GDP perspective. Now, that certainly will get impacted in terms of timelines if the war were to continue deep into 2026. So, depending upon what the scenario is, we need to be prepared. We need to continue to calibrate.
So, you said that businesses and business leaders plan well as far as contingency is concerned. Now, this is obviously among those force majeure clauses that we all have seen in the multiple contracts that is there. In such scenarios, what business leaders should be prepared for and how they should be planning? Because it's not an easy job to plan, considering that the statements by the world leaders changes by the night.
Absolutely.
So you plan things according to certain premise and assumption. But that goalpost is changing every now and then. How do you
Absolutely.
expect the business leaders to plan?
Well, it's a great point. So you begin with, let's watch the Q4 results to start with, right? So what is Q4 looking like? And if Q4 results look pretty good or pretty normal or pretty robust, then you know that at least, business has done well through a quarter in which one month has, of course, been incredibly challenging, the month of March. Then you start looking at the forecast for April, May, and June. And as you said, statements of leaders are changing every day. So one assessment is by Q1 of the year, things should start coming back to normal. Now, it'll not come back to normal overnight. We know it's going to take a couple of quarters. So one scenario is April, May, June is the quarter when perhaps we could see a cessation of violence or see a significant degradation in terms of violence. Then it would mean we just continue to roll along and focus on business. I think, as we said, the government's done a reasonably good job. We have energy reserves, crude reserves for 60 days, and I think that will continue to roll forward if we will. We need to continue to watch out for fertilizer prices because that's going to have a very, very clear impact, in terms of food prices going forward, consumption, consumer sentiment. So we need to clearly watch out for that. But if we go further down, right, 2 quarters, 3 quarters in, clearly organizations will have to start hunkering down, which means that they will have to look at cost containment.
So
However,
can you please be a bit more blunt and explicit when you say cost containment? Are you talking about job losses?
No, it's never job losses. I think in India, that is never the first step. And we have seen that through COVID. Lots of organizations continue to keep the lights on, continue to make sure that people did have their jobs. And that COVID was, took much longer than we had anticipated. And yet, I think India was very, very resilient. So I think Indian businessmen are very astute. They understand how to manage costs well. They know how to calibrate their costs with respect to potential revenue opportunities that they see. I think broadly, India's overall attraction as a nation will continue to be unchanged. If the belief is people will stop coming to India, GCCs will stop getting set up in India, and so on and so forth, all that's not going to happen. To my mind, the India story will largely remain intact. The only thing which could change perhaps is timelines.
So let me draw the parallels between COVID and the current scenarios. And though you've been you have a diverse experience in terms of handling different industries, but your career has been predominantly in the technology sector. Now, here where I have my point to make, COVID times, the tech sector did very well worldwide, unexpectedly, because that was a tailwind that they got. Everybody started working from home. So that is why there was anxieties and undercurrents initially, but later on people felt, no, companies are doing well, revenues are touching record profits, so it's fine. Whereas there was a huge impact on MSMEs. There was impact on manufacturing. There was impact of anything where a physical touch was required. So the industries which were not impacted then, now the situation is different. We are already staring at a situation where the way AI is, fair to take all the white collar jobs. If I have to believe entirely Elon Musk, right? So your tech sector, which grew during the COVID times, is not going to grow probably. And you may correct me, sir, if I'm wrong. Whereas the problems with respect to the increased input cost in other industries continues to be there. Now think about a MSME sector, somebody sitting in a Coimbatore and so on. When the cost of shipments are going to increase, right? And the money circulating in the market is going to be less. Because again, today, real estate is kind of stabilizing or kind of stagnated since last 12 months. We see the equity markets it's like a falling knife. Surprisingly, gold is also not behaving the way it is supposed to behave during the war. Is it time to hold on to what you have very tightly? Because if you do that, the economic activity stops. And then again, it cascades into a problem that there's no activity and there's no growth. So am I right in differing with you out here, sir? Or are we talking the same thing?
Manoj, did you watch the IPL yesterday evening in Bangalore? Watch it on TV or your favorite OTT channel or whatever?
I'm sorry, sir. I'm less Indian in that sense because I was doing a podcast.
You're doing a podcast, fantastic. I'd encourage you to go and see just the pictures of the stadium. Packed to the brim. Have you seen the collections of Dhurandhar 2?
I've been following that.
Following that. Does it show you anywhere that Indian consumers, the Indian mood is despondent?
Is that a conscious choice or is that ignorance? Are we ostrich in that sense, the Indian consumer, that they are not realizing what the threat is?
We have to see reality. And the reality is that market sentiment dictates how the economy ultimately is going to perform medium to long term. I have always believed that many people have been very pessimistic about India. I've seen it from the start of my career. People were pessimistic about India. That is why they took scholarships and they went to other countries to go study to make their future. People were pessimistic about India. That is why whenever they got an opportunity to flee this country to go make their fortunes, they did that. But yet India has survived and done incredibly well. So I think we must recognize that India always has this ability to surprise in a very positive fashion. I'm a big optimist. I'm a big believer in India because I have seen the story unfold in front of us. You spoke about COVID and you said that, look, we all stayed at home and we were able to work, we were able to live, we were all playing, we were getting entertained, our kids were going to school, everything was happening online. Did anyone reflect on the fact that when and how did India build this internet infrastructure which enabled all this? Had we ever done a DR drill as a country to say that 1.4 billion people will now have to sit at home and do whatever they have to do by sitting at home? There was no drill. Yet when the event occurred, all of us had the opportunity to continue to earn a livelihood. We had an opportunity. India has this incredible ability to surprise. So I think we should never be pessimistic about India. We should never be pessimistic about the tremendous will that our people have. And that is why I asked you the question that did you watch the IPL match yesterday? And when did the IPL match start?
It's been almost.
When the war in West Asia is on. It's still on. It's 4 weeks on. Our IPL is on. Everyone's going to watch. And it's going to be great. Everyone's going to break records. And many Indians, hundreds of millions of Indians are going to be glued watching that. And there is a big economy behind that as well, as you know. So I'm just giving you an anecdotal example.
Sure.
Right? That we must absolutely recognize the fact that India is very, very resilient. Indians are very, very resilient. We need to remain optimistic. Will there be short-term pain? Of course it's going to be there. We recognize it. Indians recognize this more than anybody else. But does it wipe the smile off our face? The answer is no.
So I don't intend to be pessimistic out here, if that's the way I came out to be. And I totally respect that whatever you're talking by experience and everything doesn't add up theoretically in the real world. So I take that point. But again, I think that, people from the tech sector have been till now very, very blessed and are to an extent spoiled, because there is one reality that yes, I had a stress that I could not take my son outside, for a movie during COVID times. But then there's other reality where you had migrant workers who had to leave suddenly and die midway in the highway while they were fleeing from different states towards their native state. That's also in India, because what me and you, we are talking about here is a very small fraction or a decimal of what the larger Indian economic activity reflects about. I'm not saying that this small number is something to be ignored for. I totally take that point. But now we have two waves coming is what I see. And please correct me on this. The tech sector, which was not touched or which was touched in a positive way during the COVID times, this is going to get impacted big time because of the AI, right? On the other hand, the non-tech or the physical work is concerned, the impact is going to be, you see the black marketing as far as the LPG cylinders is there. It's almost touching 4,000 plus. It's already crossed that, by the way, right? There's a shortage, and I personally saw somebody carrying 3 cylinders, one of them being a commercial in a back seat of the car because perhaps the boot was full. So there's already hoarding happening and all. We can't. These are the realities which are already reflecting. I don't know people who are going to watch the IPL whether they've noticed the man on the red light or not. That he was carrying cylinder. So yes, there is one aspect, and that makes me worry all the more. That are we ignoring the problem because we are unrealistically optimistic, or we know the problem and we'll figure out the way when it comes, and we'll hit it for a 6 again.
Again, you spoke about hoarding and so on and so forth. I mean, these are problems which have been there in India since independence. We have had shortages, cycles of them, and so on. So it's not that hoarding is happening today, and it never happened before in the 75-year history of our country. And I'm sure the government is going to take whatever action they need to. The government is watching this. Today, I think social media is able to amplify a lot of these anomalies which are occurring in society today, particularly in difficult times like this. So I think if people are doing the wrong thing, they are absolutely not doing what is right by the country, and we need to condone it. And we need to make sure that they stop doing it. And of course, I'm sure the government will do what they have to do. The broader point is that will we as a country continue to be on the path of prosperity? Will we continue to grow? Will India achieve its next milestone of being a $5 trillion economy? Because if we do that, hundreds of millions of people are going to come out of poverty. And you know that. That's the maths. In the short term, we all are realists. We do understand there will be, some pain. The government, you just look at what the government just did, right? They just reduced excise duty on fuel, which is a very brave step, by the way. So government turned around and said that we don't want the growth momentum to be impacted. Yes, there will be a fiscal impact. We will deal with that. And so you can see which way the government is going. Now imagine if we had passed on the prices to the fuel pump. What would have happened? The increase that is there. There would have been inflation. It would have gone and impacted your kitchen, my kitchen. And then all of a sudden, you would find that, there's a squeeze in terms of credit. And then it has a much larger impact on the economy. So I think we need to accept the fact that the government has taken action. I applaud the government for this. Now, your question could be, Manoj, the government has absorbed it so far. What if the oil now jumps to the next level? What if it is now $130? What is the government going to do then? Because forever the government is not going to be able to bail out. And that's why my point was that we need to calibrate scenarios. That if by the middle of the year it gets resolved, what is going to be the impact? If it goes deep into the year, you're right. There are going to absolutely, mathematically, there is going to be an impact on the kitchen cost. There is no doubt on that. And we as Indians have to be prepared for that.
So as an industry leader, and again, who's right now consulting startups also, and of course, as a man with a lot of experience on the head and otherwise, what is that you want to tell industries across the spectrum and for the boardroom people? This is what you're not watching. This is what you need to watch out for in the next 6 months. And it includes to the most humble employees on the ground like me, then Manas, perhaps it's not the time to come in your car out here. You take a metro and come here. So what is that 3 or 4 advice that you would want to give across this different audience based on your experience as a leader and as a person?
Well, first of all, to employees, guys, don't ask for a pay hike. All right. You know what the world is going through. I know everyone's going to throw bricks at me for saying that, but the reality is all of us need to step in and contribute in the best fashion that we can. Now, coming to businesses, I see 3 things. Number 1, volatility brings opportunity. And we have heard this many, many times. Corporates have an opportunity to try and figure out what is it that we can do given what we are seeing happening geopolitically. At the end of this war, India, to my mind, is going to be better positioned to engage with a number of countries, which perhaps in the past, our engagement was reasonable, but not at the best potential level. Indian firms will have an opportunity to rebuild, particularly when you start looking at what's happening in West Asia. So it'll certainly give a fillip to people who are in construction. It'll give a fillip to people in the services industry. Many countries are going to look for very trusted partnerships and relationships. And I think India can be a great partner for many of them, which means that for Indian businesses, there is going to be a bigger opportunity to go after global markets. And maybe global markets will welcome us with more open arms than what we have seen in the past. So certainly, as far as we are concerned, our businesses need to look for potential opportunity in this volatility. We shouldn't assume that all doors are going to remain closed for us, based on what's happening in the world. The second aspect I certainly see, which could come our way, and we need to really think hard, which perhaps we may not have thought hard so far, is around energy. We need to recognize the fact that we need to give a big push as a nation to renewable energy. Corporates have a big role to play. We need to look at alternate sources for energy. We know that this is a big issue for us. 90% of our crude is imported, and half of that comes through the Strait of Hormuz. So we need to recognize that reality. So looking at energy, I think every organization needs to look at their energy footprint and really see how they can recalibrate that footprint to make sure that we rely lesser and lesser on fossil fuels, which are imported, and move on to alternate sources, if you will. The third, very important, is policy. I think many businesses, and you spoke many times about tech. Let me begin with tech. In tech, we used to assume that the policy regime around the world was neutral. So we could happily go into any country, pitch our tent, and go and do business. That is going to change. Geopolitics is going to change. Every country is going to look at who they want to welcome, who they don't want to welcome, with a very different lens. So the third aspect which businesses will really have to look at is the policy side. So you need to look at your energy footprint. You need to go and look at geopolitics, which will impact your business, could impact your business. Hopefully for India, that should be a better story. Hopefully for Indian businesses should be a better story, but it's not going to be uniform around the world. Third is policy. And all these three have to be spoken about in the same single conversation. That never happens. You talk about business, you don't talk about energy. It's a separate topic. You talk about energy, you don't talk about geopolitics. Maybe you do because you have to in energy if it's fossil fuels. But then you don't talk about the policy regime. We have to have these discussions in the same conversation. That is going to change.
So, in your assessment, what are the industries that are going to get benefited in the next 6 months? Because I want to really end this particular section on an optimistic note, and you're an eternal optimist, right? So, what are the industries that are going to get benefited because of the current scenario?
Well, I think...
If you have to put your money on.
Yeah, I think I've put my money on India, right? I decided to be here. I decided to stay here, just like you did, Manas. So both you and I have bet on India. That's why we are here. We will talk about AI as well, because I see that to be a bigger issue than the war, frankly. I mean, I know we spent a lot of time on the war. What's going to happen? Is it going to get worse, better? If it gets worse, what happens? If it's better, if it ends earlier, what happens, etc. But really, the elephant in the room is AI, because AI is going to be there, right? Even after the war stops or cessates or whatever. And I think that is what is going to be something which we should spend time on in terms of trying to see the impact of AI during the war, post the war. I think organizations tend to spend lesser time on policy, frankly. Mm-hmm. At least a lot of business leaders tend to spend lesser time. A lot of founders of startups tend to spend lesser time. I think they'll have to spend a lot of more time around policy. That is where I see the world going forward.
All right. Any sectors so that you think are
absolutely to answer your question on the sectors? Certainly, the construction sector is going to be a big beneficiary. I also see the IT sector to be a net beneficiary, because India has been a relatively safe haven. And look at the GCCs. Nobody's talking about the GCCs abating, coming to India. because everyone recognizes the talent pool is here. India's cracked the puzzle. India knows how to do it. From India, lots of global firms are already serving their multinational clients. So I would say, even looking at AI and the talent that India is building, I think that as far as the IT sector is concerned, people will continue to come to India in a very, very big way. I also see the government giving a big impetus to manufacturing. I think the government recognizes the importance of manufacturing. We've already seen the PLI schemes. So clearly, as far as that is concerned, you could see India becoming a more important manufacturing hub. In fact, I will go to the extent of saying that so far, India has been positioning itself as, we are China plus one. I'm turning around and saying we are going to be everybody plus one. Everyone will want to come to India. It's not trying to find just an alternate to China. We are going to be seen as a very safe haven. So I would say I clearly see the government giving a big impetus to manufacturing, giving a big impetus to future PLI-like schemes. I also see the government giving a lot of encouragement to electric vehicles. We saw the Delhi government's already announced some kind of incentives. That was even prior to the war. But I think that the government had a very, very effective scheme called FAME. I will not be surprised if the government comes out with another FAME-like scheme to go and push consumers, customers to move towards electric vehicles. Then that means that the automotive sector will also get a big push in that direction. The moment the automotive sector gets a big push, the auto component sector gets a big push, and then they are a very, very important part of the global economy as well. So I would see manufacturing continuing to do well. I would see renewable energy getting a big impetus because of what we are seeing happening in front of our own eyes. We are all co-sufferers in what's happening out here. I clearly see the construction sector getting a big benefit. And we know that moment manufacturing gets a big positive push, it has a positive impact on MSMEs as well. And moment that happens, there's more money, hopefully, in the pocket of consumers, and the FMCG sector gets a positive impact as a result. So if India continues to consume at a rapid rate, that has a positive impact on everyone. We have to watch what happens to fertilizer prices. We have to watch how our food prices pan out over the next few months. Those are risks that we have to calibrate as we move forward. But I clearly see that if the war ends quicker, it's going to be a very big plus for India. If the war takes a certain period of time to kind of, ebb, if you will, India's larger story will remain unchanged because of our demographics, because of what we are seeing happening in manufacturing, because of our digital infrastructure. So the broader India story will remain unchanged. Yes, if the war goes on for a longer period of time, each one of us will have to face some pain. Hopefully that will be shorter term rather than in the longer term.
Thank you, sir. So I'll now get more. I'll move from the war zone right now to certain points that you made. You spoke about, the GCCs, you spoke about, and of course, nobody knows better than you. Now, here is a scenario which has happened. We have seen the tech data centers getting bombed in the Middle East. I see that could be an opportunity for India for the migration of those particular data centers out here. I also see a possible migration. 400,000 Indians have been evacuated. We have close to 90 million out there. So there's a huge diaspora. Now, I want to ask you out here whether you see this as a net benefit to India by the reverse brain drain or brain gain back for the motherland, or do you think it's going to be a liability because remittances are going to stop, right? Also, from a pure tech point of view, if I combine this along with the demography that we have, I still wonder and question myself whether we have a demographic dividend or we have a liability, because it takes to the other problem about how the resources have been trained, and also about whether influx of such migrant population back to India due to these reasons, is it going to give an overall flip or is it going to add strain to the economy?
Yeah, again, thank you. I think they're all very pertinent questions. So let me first answer the GCC, the data center thing. Now, you know that significant investment announcements have already been made as far as setting up of data center infrastructure in India is concerned. We've seen announcements to the tune of $70 billion, and it's growing every day. Already has been made. The bigger challenge that I see, and we've not really spoken about that, is connectivity. Okay, let us remember that 1/3 of our westbound internet traffic flows through the same troubled waters where we are seeing war today, which is the Strait of Hormuz. That is a big risk. The water that carries the low data rate, India has got the lowest tariff as far as data is concerned. The waterways that carry that traffic are on fire. You cannot send ships in to repair cables, God forbid, if something were to happen. And these fiber cables are just the size of your garden water hose. So that I see as a big risk. The second is we were supposed to get significant additional capacity to come in. In fact, this month, which has now got stalled. When you start looking at applications like AI and you start looking at serving global customers from India, as far as cloud applications and others are concerned, Manas, you know better than me, there are two key determinants: latency and bandwidth. And if both of them are going to get compromised, that could absolutely impact the India story. So I think we have to be very, very mindful of the fact that while today GCCs are continuing to serve global customers, while the data centers are coming in, they are setting up shop in India, we have to sort out our bandwidth, our undersea cable issues. They are going to be very important. That means India needs to make more investments on the eastern coast so that we are able to leverage submarine cables out of the Pacific, if you will. India will have to invest a lot more in terms of creating the right infrastructure to be able to support and repair cables. And India will have to find alternate routes, maybe come by land and so on and so forth, to be able to serve the European markets as an example, or the African markets as another example.
So I have a suggestion to make, if I may. Is it not the time for the government to just open up the satellite bandwidth system? And, Elon Musk has been waiting for Starlink to bring it in India, and so is the Reliance Group. Is this not an opportunity and an opportune time to open it up? Because, again, laying down cables and fibers across the seabeds, it's going to take some time. We are not going to have it overnight, right? And then today you could have these troubled waters, and tomorrow you could have the Eastern Theatre.
So you need both. You need both. You need alternates on both. Let's take a minute on satellite. I've been in that industry. I worked in the satellite communications industry in the 90s. Latency is a big issue when you start looking at some of the applications. Cost is another issue. You must remember that at the end of the day, the reason why people come to India is just not for the talent, it's also for the cost. So we must remember that whatever we are able to deliver at a affordable cost point, if you will. So yes, we can open up the skies. It will solve some of the problem. But then you look at AI applications, you look at, how they hog bandwidth. And it's not just one way. This is not like a television network where you're just beaming one way. This is two-way communication. So, you need to be able to cater to that as well. Satellite will provide some respite, but the harsh reality is that until we have high speed, low latency fiber, given the volume of the kind of data that's going to flow, particularly if more and more firms are going to come to India to set up data centers, it's going to be very, very significant. So we have to depend upon cable for a long, long time. Yes, there will be alternate things that we will do, which we also did. You remember in 2008, there was an accidental cut of a cable in the Persian Gulf. And if I remember at that time, 60% of our bandwidth all of a sudden disappeared.
And then we had these... Then we built the networks of the Pacific and so on.
That took time, as you said. That took time. But we need to look at land routes. We need to start thinking about it. We need to look at the eastern seaboard and see what we can do there, go via the Pacific, sign up more agreements. And there is more capacity which is already lined up, for India. Unfortunately, because of the war, we have not been able to get that connectivity, on the ground. But sooner or later, some of that will happen as well. So I would see that as a very important determinant of long-term success for Indian IT.
So if I have to wear an optimistic hat, and which I also like to wear because of the company that I have, if I see the Indian diplomacy, the way they have worked, and the fact that we have positioned ourselves as always as either non-aligned or strategic autonomy or whatever, it should be hopefully benefiting us in terms of more people coming from Middle East and setting up our data centers out here. We recently had an India AI summit, and of course there was a lot of hype around it. We can quantify that, how much was it just or not. I wanted to ask you, by shifting gears out here, how ready we are for the AI revolution, both as terms of consumer and in terms of creators?
Right. Let me answer your question straight. I think as consumers, no marks for guessing, right? Everyone in India is a consumer. You also mentioned and you asked a question on demographic dividend. Is it positive or is it negative? And this debate has always been there. My view, and you spoke about the India AI Summit. If you were in any of the halls, which I'm sure you were in when the India AI Summit was going on, we had lots of global AI leaders who were coming in. What was very visible was the high energy in the halls. I don't know if you saw that. It was visible. That kind of energy you don't see everywhere in the world. The number of people who were gate crashing, trying to get into the AI Summit was not funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a very clear indicator that in India, people recognize that AI is here. They recognize it's going to change the way the narrative is going to be for them in terms of employment, their livelihoods, the way they engage, and so on and so forth going forward in the future. And therefore, I think I have tremendous belief in the youth of India. I work with a number of startups. I watch what they are doing. And I can tell you, Manas, I am so impressed with the level of focus, the understanding, the diligence, their optimism, and the kind of work that they are doing. It is unbelievable. We're not seeing it in front of us because, as you know, it takes time for all of this, the tree to grow. But I would say the seeds that we are seeing being sown, we should be incredibly proud about the brilliance of the youth of our country and what they are doing. They start from their dorms in college, and then they kind of bring it right out in the open. The number of areas, the kind of areas, whether it's quantum, whether it is this, whether it is that, I think in every area, they are stepping forward, and we will see these results in front of our own eyes. I am very optimistic about the youth of India, what they are doing, their capability, and their ability to take our nation forward. They will make this nation proud. 20 years from now, India is going to be a very different India because of them.
So I do, when I look into this room, and I think barring me and you, the average age is less than 25. So I do believe that, the new generation is doing a great work in terms of starting it on their own. But is it fair to say that we have been a cost arbitrage industry till now, specifically the IT industry? And we have lagged on innovation.
Yeah, I would tend to think that we have innovated a lot. The beneficiaries of that innovation have been outside India. So look at GCCs, Indian land, Indian talent, Indian compliance, platform not Indian, benefits of value creation not Indian. Mm-hmm. Can we change that? The innovation that is being done today in India for global clients by IT services firms, the innovation that is being done by our talent sitting in the GCCs for their global parents is remarkable. I'm not at liberty to share names of customers, but when I was working actively in the global IT services industry, I will never forget an executive of a very large US tech firm came in and we were taking him around. And we had taken permission from some of our customers that we could show the kind of work that we were doing. And he said, I never knew that all these products that I'm doing and I'm using at home in the US are actually getting developed here. And we said that, well, we have taken permission to show you around. So we have shown you around, but we're not going to be able to utter a single word around what you have said. So let us not undermine the kind of work that our engineers are doing in India and that they have been doing. Yes, I agree with you. When we set up our initial GCCs, and I was a part of that story many years ago, our pitch was cost arbitrage. So don't get me wrong. When I was pitching to my home office in the years I worked with global MNCs, my pitch was twofold. Come here for talent, come here for cost. Now you can say, Manoj, that was an easy sell. So we had to make the pitch that people were willing to accept.
Well, any sales is difficult.
Any sales is difficult. But then at the same time, I also said at that time, which was more than 25 years ago, that you come for cost. I can guarantee you, you will stay for quality and you will invest for innovation. 25 years later, I can say that we have reached the third step.
Now it's about investing in innovation.
Innovation.
Because again, sir, I'm happy to hear that we are in the third phase right now, because as an Indian, I always feel that why, and this was Bill Gates quoting, I think in the second visit to India, that almost 35% of the workforce then was Indian graduates. But why we have not created an XP? Why we have not created a 98? Why we have not made? I mean, we have an Indian who's the CEO of Google, which is great, and so will be the Indian origin engineers. But an Indian company bringing in to that level of product. So maybe we are now entering into that phase. Now, here's my question on that, sir. Innovation needs investments. Right now, it's a time for investments, or it is a time for survivability. Again, considering that what's happening around the world. If you have to give a plan to a startup or to an existing organization, is this the time to invest in talent? Or it's the time to go, no, just hold on to all expenses, and right now it's a matter of survivability.
The next 4 quarters. Amazing. I can be very honest, brutally honest. All the startups that I advise are all in investment mode.
Wow.
Not a single founder has come and told me that, we're going to stop this or we're going to tap the brakes. Everyone recognizes these things happen. We have to continue to move forward. That is why I said I am so optimistic about our youth, our talent. They are optimistic. They see the bigger picture. They know that they can get there, and they will do whatever it needs, whatever it takes to get there. You spoke about innovation. There was a point in time when domestic cloud data centers that were being set up by Make in India players, Indian entrepreneurs, focused on, and you know this area very well, they focused on offering infrastructure as a service. Whereas the global hyperscalers were focusing on the platform. They were focusing on the value add. They were focusing on the tools, whether it was around AI, whether it was around containerization, so on and so forth. But you look at what domestic cloud service providers are doing today. Their story has also changed from infrastructure to platform. They are now building their own platforms. So I can see that migration happening because they recognize that that is where you're going to capture value. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to capture value just by creating real expensive real estate, if you will, with server storage and networks. So I think that the journey which Indian entrepreneurs are taking now is a very different journey. They recognize where potential value is and they are investing in those areas. That is why I'm so optimistic about what they are doing. And I think AI is giving them even a bigger motivation where their ability to deliver value today is fantastic because they can do it quicker, faster, better now as compared to the past and at a lower cost point.
So the CHRO said, we need to make investments in the new resources. The CFO said, we don't have money. The CFO said, what if we train them and they leave us? And the CEO said, what if we don't and they stay with us? My question out here is, in these times, if holding talent, organizations, they should be going more into investing in resources right now, or it is time for brutal cost cutting?
Well, I am a big believer in the youth of this country. And I tell anyone and everyone who comes to me, double down on hiring youngsters.
All right.
Hire from colleges, hire youngsters, train them up. I can assure you that in 6 months, you will get the return on investment. They are incredibly bright kids. They understand AI very, very well. They are going to be able to lead in terms of new projects, the digital transformation that organizations want to do thanks to AI. These kids are the best guys to understand this stuff. I want to also, Manas, take on what you told me yesterday when we were talking informally. When I asked you, Manas, who do you use to edit your podcast? And your answer to me was, and it only doubled the intent and what I just said. You told me, Manoj, he's a 19-year-old kid from Malda. Could we have expected this 20 years ago? You started your career 2 decades ago. Go back 2 decades. Would you have been able to trust a 19-year-old kid from Malda to deliver world-class production quality of anything to you? You have your answer.
On a lighter note, sir, I would have wanted somebody trusting me then. But I get the point. But here's my question out here. You said, go and hire youngsters. And I want to understand out there, and maybe because with a bias. You're saying that because the youngsters have quality, or because, again, it's a cost arbitrage?
It's not cost. Youngsters understand new age technologies better than older generation. In a way, they are born in this generation. They are guys who have seen AI from day zero. You can say, Manoj, AI is only a 2-year-old story. But they have imbibed this story quicker, better, faster. They do not have any baggage of the past. They do not have any encumbrances that they need to worry about. They have an open mind. They recognize what these technologies can do. They will leverage them far better, far quicker than all of us with our experience behind us. Because in a way, we are also slaves to what we have learned in the past. And it's difficult to unlearn.
So you're right on that. And here's another view to it. You have 10 lakh graduates coming in every year. Are they all quality to be employable? Number one. Number two, you said that we are own victims of our own experience. Is experience dead?
So let me answer the question in 2 parts. One is, we've always had lots of graduates coming into the mainstream. We have to look at the fundamental talent, what each individual wants, where does each individual have what you could say their right to win. Mm-hmm. I think many times we just put people in stereotype buckets and say, okay, got 10 lakh, 10 million, whatever number of graduates coming out, all of them were going to coding. The answer is no. Different people have different strengths, and we need to leverage each one of them for their strength. So we have to pick the guys who are interested in our area of work. I think one thing we need to do is we need to train them. I think we have to accept that fact. Mm-hmm. We have to train them. We have to skill them. We have to bring them up to speed. And we have to create newer opportunities for them. So Manas, let me go back into my own career. 25 years ago, we did not have network engineers in this country. We had very few. In fact, if you look at the top-notch network engineers in India, you'd be surprised if I told you we just had 10 of them. People laugh at me. And then we said, how are we going to create internet as the backbone of our industry? businesses, governments, etc., unless we have the talent. And it was the corporate sector which actually went and built that talent. And I can speak from first-hand experience, having led that charge. Today, India has one of the largest pools of networking engineers in the world. Now, this was not an area of study or education which existed at that point in time. So I think we have to continue to look for new areas where we can engage our talent. We need to also see where our talent wants to go. Each individual is different, and find the right path. I think each one of us has a role to play in terms of bringing them on, in terms of training them, whether it is by leveraging our CSR funds, whether it is in terms of directly bringing them on, whether it is through our internship programs, whether it is in terms of partnering between academia and industry. And I can tell you today, the partnerships between industry and academia are far better, far tighter than I've ever seen in my career. Believe me, you can say that they are not where they should be. I agree. But I can safely say that they're far better than what they were. Today, industry is much more open to working with academia, and vice versa. Professors do see a benefit of working with their students who have gone into industry, and just don't look at the student and say, oh, this guy got a B minus, so should I be collaborating with him? I think both sides, the mindsets have changed.
Is there.
Openness is there. People are working together. Can it be better? Absolutely, it can. I see a pathway going forward, but everyone must collaborate. Everyone has a role to play. The government has its role to play. We in the corporate sector have a role to play. Academic institutions have a role to play. All of us have to come together. Then and only then are we going to find the real answer. But I would say for corporates, believe in youngsters of this country. They are far better than what we were. When you look at the founder of Zepto, how old was he when he started Zepto? How old was he when he did his IPO? All of us know that. What were we doing when we were 18 and we were 23? We need to ask ourselves that question.
So you said that, we need to invest more and so on. And it's time to double down on, hiring and all. So is it fair to say, just coming back from the first thing that you said, that, there should be hikes or there should not be hikes?
Well, as I said,
that's a part of the investment.
Absolutely. You said the right thing. Short term, what do we do? And I said, if there's short term pain, then everyone needs to contribute. So that's why I said, guys, don't ask for pay hikes right now. We have to see the outcome of the war. The last thing that you want is that you go and spike up inflation, isn't it? You don't want that to happen.
All right.
So I think all of us, I keep saying, we all have to contribute. We have to be good citizens. We need to do what we need to do. In fact, you turned around and said, Manoj, next time we are together, we better take a metro and come here and leave our cars behind. Absolutely. Each one of us needs to do what we need to do in the short term. But I am saying in the medium term, in the long term, trust our youngsters. They will do very well.
Apart from youngsters, where does the remaining workforce go, sir?
Well, I would say that majority of the workforce today, if you look at the demographics, is youngsters in a way. You asked a question, what happens to the experienced people? And I need to answer that
Absolutely.
question, right?
Are they the most gullible?
Yeah, I think that there is tremendous value in understanding the domain. Where you differentiate is in terms of domain. So let's say you have significant domain knowledge around regulatory tech for the financial services sector. You need to pair that domain knowledge with knowledge of the tech. So I think experienced people bring significant value to the table because of the richness of their understanding of the domain. Whether it is manufacturing, whether it is retail, whether it is any other sector that the individual has experience and expertise in, they absolutely bring that value. So imagine now you integrate or bring in AI into fashion technology. You need somebody who understands fashion. That is very important. Just knowledge of the technology alone is not going to help you make sure that when you come out with your next series of fashion clothes, if you will, for the season, you're going to succeed. You need to understand the domain very, very well.
So there's a There's a saying, I'm forgetting who said it, but then that the world is going to be the world for journalists in the AI world. Do you think it's going to be a domain experts, or do you think it's journalists? I may be asking you to repeat your answer, but I want to emphasize on this. Is this going to be the journalist world where the education and knowledge is getting commoditized and free for everybody? It's accessible. There's no old clubs around it, or it is actually going to be specific domain knowledge, experienced people they're going to call the shots?
It's going to be collaboration. No one individual is going to win and succeed individually on his or her own. It's collaboration between domain experts, technologists, customers coming together so that you can go and create value jointly. So it's not going to be about individual heroism.
So let's deliberate on this bit. You said that it's not going to be about individual heroism. I want to take that to the way organizations are going to change. I think it was Sam Altman who said, I think so, but then somebody made a statement that we're going to see one individual having $1 billion company. So that's one employee company being $1 billion company, right? Now, if it's going to be collaboration, yes, with tech, but then if it's about how does it change the organization? Do we see the middle layer, the middle managers becoming irrelevant, and it is going to be individual gladiators leveraging technology, or it is going to be everyone, sabka saath, sabka vikas?
Nobody said that a single person creating $1 billion business is going to do that without an ecosystem. There was no qualification.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you structure yourself could be different. But collaboration, whether it's internally within organizations or collaborating with an external ecosystem, is going to be super important, super critical. And I firmly believe in that. And if anybody turns around and says you can go and create $1 billion enterprise without creating an ecosystem, it's going to be tough. You need to interact with the world. You need customers. You need to engage. Nobody's going signing $1 billion check with somebody they don't know, they can't connect, or they don't understand the value of what is being delivered. Yes, one individual could do that with technology, go build the product, but we'll need the entire ecosystem to be able to help drive revenue, to be able to help ship products if you're physically going to ship a product, to be able to go and test out if you're, let's say, driving IT-based solutions, and so on and so forth. So I think we must recognize that ecosystems are going to play a much bigger role going forward in the future. The middle layer that you talk about, in a way, represents that ecosystem. Now that middle layer has to become very effective. They have to be delivering a value. Now, if you're just going to be sitting in the middle layer and approving vacation applications, I totally agree with you. An agent is going to do it. You don't need a middle level manager to do that. All those tasks will go.
So let me ask a very brass tack question. You've had an illustrious career, and today you're not chasing any fire number. You're working out of pure zeal, passion, whatever it is. What has been throughout, by the way. But definitely, you're not working because of keeping the lights on. If you have to hire somebody, will you hire somebody between an age bracket of 35 to 45 or 20 to 30? And why and when?
A very good question. And again, I work through an ecosystem. That's why I was very passionate when I used the word ecosystem. In my ecosystem, I've got guys who are 20, 25 years old. In my ecosystem, I have people who are sub 40 years old. I take that. I also have people in the 50s. So it depends upon what one wants to achieve. Mm-hmm. And each one of them brings a unique value and expertise. And each one of them is, in a way, an expert in different domains. The youngsters are experts when it comes to social media. People in their 30s and 40s have very deep understanding around policy and the policy domain. And that's not easy experience and expertise to gather. You have to be in it for many, many years. People who are at a senior level are coming and helping me to see how one can re-architect organizations for success going forward in the future, because you do need years of experience and, as they would say, deep scars on your back to be able to help organizations transform. So you need people at different age brackets, if you will, to help you solve different problems. And I do that through an ecosystem.
But so what do you, in each age bracket, what do you evaluate? And if I have to be very selfishly ask this question on this podcast, people in the middle who spent 15 to 25, 20 years in the career, because they were building their careers based on a education that you come from, right? Similar school of thought. Now, suddenly there is that 45 is a new retiring age in the corporate world, right? In the tech world specifically, with the AI being around them. How do they stay relevant? Can they stay relevant?
The answer is absolutely yes. I think they need to unlearn and they need to relearn. So as long as they keep themselves updated, they absolutely have relevance. Also, let us remember on the go-to-market side, experience counts for a lot even today. AI agents have not gone and replaced B2B sales guys, just as a simple example. All right. Your question to me could be, Manoj, will that happen in the future? Well, maybe at some distant point in the future, but Manas, you would have retired for sure by then. You're not retiring at 45. So I'm just saying that there are going to be roles where there is still significant value for people at a certain age bracket, like you said, 45 and so on. So having good domain knowledge, having deep understanding of specific functions, in today's day and age, when the world is undergoing transition, I would say you need all kinds to make the world. It is not a one size fits all. It is not that agents are replacing all of us on Monday morning. That is not happening.
So I want to move from now. Before I go to the next point, I want to ask this very pertinent question as far as the way organizations will change or may change. Do you think we'll need managers, or will it be we are looking at organization structures where there's one CEO, one orchestrator, or composer as far as orchestra is concerned, and then there are individual contributors below who are expert in what they do, because for the remaining gaps we have technology to fill in.
Yeah, I think organization structures are going to change. I think that's the same question that people are asking in terms of delivery models as far as IT services is concerned, that the pyramid is maybe not the right model when you want to go and deliver an AI project. So I think organizations will absolutely have to reconfigure. So if you look on the IT delivery side, so people are looking at different polygons. Someone is saying from a pyramid, it'll become a hexagon. Somebody is saying it'll become diamond shape. And likewise, you ask the same question, that are we going to have flatter organization structures? And I think as we kind of integrate more and more technology, AI agents, if you will, obviously the reality of life is that flatter structures are going to be the order of the day, because now AI agents are going to be able to do a lot of the mundane and menial tasks. And I would say that is fantastic. I mean, if I go back, what did I really dread being a manager? In the early years, and that changed a lot. You laugh at it, Manas. I would come to my office in the morning and there would be this big, huge pile of checks that I would have had to sign, because there were no digital payments at that time. So 300 rupees to the flower wala, so much to the security wala, so much to, we just bought stationery yesterday. So every day I would be signing a pile of checks. And you can imagine the people in accounts who are writing those checks. There are people who are validating. There are guys who are creating vouchers along with each check. Then there are guys who are looking at the invoices and all that. So I'm just saying that now all that went, but I still existed as a manager. Didn't I exist? Because then I said, thank God, my 1 hour in the morning, instead of doing this, we're now going to spend it in terms of customer face time. So I can now make one more call with my sales guys to customers, which otherwise I would have had to spend in the office signing those checks. Very simple example, what I've seen in front of my own eyes. But human beings have this uncanny ability of moving up the value chain when the drudgery is taken off. Now, do I miss signing the checks? I don't. Who likes to sign 50 times every morning? And many times my signatures mismatch would happen, because by the time on the 40th check, I'm just scribbling it away saying, I need to get this done. We had to go and apply, we had to go and approve leave applications. How many of us felt happy doing that? We had to physically sign expense claims of everyone, because without ink signature, the accountant would not approve. Now imagine, every day in the morning, you got checks to sign, you got these expense claims to sign, you got this to do. All of that work today is all digital. All of that happens automatically. If there's an exception, that comes through workflow. Now, the good news is that now the workflow, many of the tasks are also going to happen automatically thanks to AI agents. So that means a lot of people who are working behind the scenes in those workflows, their life will also get, elevated, and they will be also able to deliver more. So I think that we will see economic activity improve. I think it will have a very positive impact on the GDP of the world.
So how do, in that case, middle managers add value to the people, to the ground force? Because, you like it or not, but at least there's always a whisper, there's always a crib that my manager or my middle manager, or there's an insecurity at the middle management level that, all they're doing is taking the data, collating it, putting it, showing it at the top, making Excel sheets, making decks. My point is, how are they going to be relevant? Because all this work, which was, or maybe just giving discounts, because all you have is a rate card with you. Now, all that can be automated, and frankly, you don't need anybody for that.
I'll tell you where you need.
Yeah.
Sorry for pausing you there, because I paused you on the discounts part, right? That's where I said stop. When it comes to discounting, it is not a pure mathematical game.
Yeah.
It is judgment. That is where a middle manager's role is. Yes, today, the guy has to approve, it goes on an email, it goes into a workflow. So you're looking at this guy saying, oh, Manoj is approving this discount just because he's at a certain level and he's allowed by the empowerment matrix to give that discount. What perhaps you are not realizing is that there's a judgment call he's also making as he's putting the workflows through, as he's putting his approvals through the workflow. The judgment part is critical. So middle managers will be able to spend a lot of time in terms of doing due diligence. The quality of their judgment, to my mind, will become better because we have taken the grunt work away. Now, is this going to happen for all? Of course not. The reality is that some middle managers will see this as an opportunity of adding greater value, of learning and moving forward. Some guys may find it tough. But this has happened in every generation. Remember, as a middle manager, I told you what I would do every day in the morning. Now, you would have actually at that time, if we were talking, you would have said, Manoj, what's going to happen to your job? Because all this has got automated, the banking systems, all the expense claims, etc. So now what work do? You come in the morning, you drink a cup of tea, and you must be biting your teeth after that because now you got nothing to do. But we all changed. We looked at it as X more number of hours where we can be much more productive, add value to the business, and help us to think, and help us to innovate in terms of business models, new ideas, new areas where we can go and perhaps take our business, new product lines, new service lines. So you can think a lot. Middle management has a very important role to play.
So Darwin's theory of evolution versus the AI revolution, right? Because there's Sam Altman who says that surely the technology has gone ahead and my kids are not going to be as smart as AI. So the things that have changed in the last 25 years, the first time we're having a technology which is really, really giving challenge to the human intelligence and evolution. Now, in that case, my question to you is, whatever, say if you have come across 100 individuals, and I'm sure you would have done more, and 100 middle managers, how many of you, what percentage of them do you see getting redundant because you think that they will not be able to match the pace of this revolutionary technology?
I think it depends on the individual, depends on the organization.
Yeah.
The big advantage we have today is that a lot of tools are available online. So unlike in the past when it was incredibly hard to, learn something new, it's become much, much easier.
True.
So I would say it depends upon individual initiative. I do hope that more people learn. That's my hope as an optimist. Now you could have a different opinion as compared to me. But I have also seen that individuals, when they are pushed with their back to the wall, they tend to do better. I don't know if in your college, as you may not, you're a bright kid, ever had to give a supplementary exam. I can tell you, as somebody who has had to take a supplementary exam, I think if I had really studied as hard for my supplementary, as I did for my supplementary exam, if I had done it during the course, my grades would have been much better. So I think as human beings, when we are pushed with our back to the wall, we are able to somehow pick up the courage and do things which ordinarily we would not have been able to. AI is maybe that moment when a lot of people who you might see as being very, very average, guys showing no initiative, etc., all of a sudden kind of wake up and recognize the fact that if they don't transform themselves, then the future for them, unfortunately, is not going to be bright.
So a clarification, a boasting clarification and a question both. So as far as supplementary exams are concerned, believe me, my credentials are better than you. I outshine number of them. Now, again, I'm not going to let you go away with this answer, sir, because you've been a numbers person. And I really want to know this because it depends on an individual as an economist answer. It depends. But then I'm really asking with your experience that because so there are people who evolve. There are people who don't evolve. There are people who learn, there are people who become redundant. And it's not about getting pushed to the wall. Push to the wall is when, you have the bombs got exploded. It's late.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not talking about them who are already dead, But in a sense, how, because you've seen all these four decades and you've seen Y2K revolution, you've seen 2008 crisis and so on and so on. Do you see most of us, people, and when I say most, I'm talking about maybe 60%, 70%. I want you to give you a number. This time I want a covered number from you.
Yeah.
That what is that you dread that these many people will be irrelevant?
I think people will look for alternate roles. I think that is more likely to happen. They're going to switch. So for example, and I've seen that happening, as you said, through the different journeys of people turning around and saying, look, I don't think I have it in me to ride the next wave of technology transformation. But I'm great in cooking. I'm going to open my kitchen. Or I am great in music and I'm going to produce music videos. And so it's not surprising when you look at a lot of very talented people, they turn around and say, I studied this, but now I'm doing this. I think a lot of people we are going to see coming into the creative field, from this pool, if you will, of what you call mid-level managers who are going to hit a crisis. So I think many people are going to switch roles in jobs. They're going to pursue what and where they believe they truly are different and are truly unique and are truly better than others. And so far, they have been in the roles and jobs because that is what came to them. Maybe when they graduated out of college, you grabbed the first job and then you kind of continue to do that. Maybe this is the point in time when they will pause, they will reflect, and they will rewire their own careers. I see a lot of that happening. And therefore, to that point, there could be lesser people, at that level in organizations. But it's not that these guys are just going to become fossilized. They will find interesting work to do. They will follow their passion. They will follow their heart. And maybe many of them will also get motivated by what you are doing, Manas, and say, hey, maybe this is something that I can do and work along with Manas and take it to the next level. So this is not maybe you get better talent, right? Working with you.
Let's hope so, sir. I have great guests and I hope get better talent also. Thanks a lot for the motivation. But let me come to to three critical industries that, again, I want to go back. So because we discussed about geopolitics, we discussed about the industries that are going to get impacted. We also discussed about a bit of how the demographic is playing role and where the jobs are going to get impacted and so on. Now I want to ask you three specific industries. And I think because they're heavyweights as far as stocks are concerned, stock markets, they're heavyweights as well as the future of India is concerned. The semiconductor industry, the pharma industry, and the BFSI industry. Why? Because they have a huge dependence, again, on the geopolitical event that is happening. They're on the prime focus of government of India. They're great job generators and great technology consumers, direct and indirect both. How do you see these industries?
All three of them are going to do well. All three will do well. Because I don't take a short-term view. In the short term, there'll always be stuff happening. And there always has been. Every year there's been some crisis or the other. Some years it's been more, some years less. But I think the three sectors that you've spoken about will continue to do well. You look at the BFSI sector, again, you look at PSU banks, you look at their balance sheets, very, very robust. You look at the investments they are making in technology, very significant, if you will. And they will continue to plow that path, if you will. Similarly, in the pharma, India is the pharmaceutical capital of the world. Of course, you will argue and say we don't make the raw material.
I was going to come to that.
I knew you would come to that. And that is why I said ecosystems are important. And that is why I think India's position of being neutral, not being a part of one bloc or the other, could play in our favor going forward in the future. I think India has done remarkably well in terms of making sure that a position of neutrality is known to the world. Now, you might turn around and say, Manoj, but silence in today's day and age may not be very helpful. Yeah, we can debate that. But, as you said, strategic autonomy, a word that everyone talks about, in a way, I think is good for a country like India. There are challenges, absolutely. But as far as these three industries are concerned, medium term, I see them to do well for India. I think IT has got hit the worst, as you know. The Nifty IT 50 has been battered more than the overall index. Let's hope that the worst is behind. Let's hope that the AI fear has been factored in, but you can never say. The stock markets think in the way that they think best. But certainly, I think as far as India IT is concerned, Indian IT is rewiring. Our leaders recognize they need to change. They are investing significantly in reskilling people. They are rethinking the delivery models themselves. And Indian IT has this uncanny ability of bouncing back.
Well, I hope the same. So I want to first come back again on BFS and healthcare, and a very specific question out here. And I want to relate it to the macro environment also. If you see, we just spoke about the payments happening in yuan, right? So where on the BRICS side, we wanted, on one side, we want the rupee to go up, de-dollarization. Here's yuan catching up. In fact, the CIPS transactions that have happened, they've increased 43% compared to last year, which is contemporary to SWIFT, if I may say so. Now, here is BFSI sitting on a currency risk. Rupee is on a slide. There's a rising cost of capital. Inflation is around. The growth is pegged around 5%, right? On the other side, our healthcare, as you rightly thought, and I want to make it very clear that the questions were not shared, like always with my guest. Healthcare is staring at Chinese API. The raw materials coming from there. We are not great friends. Take it to semiconductors. 85% of the rare earth are, based out of China. The processing capability of those rare earths is over there. So we have huge dependency from somebody we surely don't have friendly relations with in these three critical industries.
India is very pragmatic in our approach. China is one of our largest trading partners today. So I think India has been able to balance its priorities very well. And I think going forward, the government recognizes that there are areas we need to make investments. Rare earth, as you know, the government is already working on, finding resources within India. We have enough resources. We need to be able to dig them out, and we need to be able to process them and so on. And the government is very focused around doing that. So we recognize that that is reality. There are some areas. We are in an interconnected world. We will not have everything. We will have to look at alternate sources, and where alternate sources are not there, we have to do best with whatever and whoever we can. So I think we need to take a pragmatic approach. We have to take an ecosystem approach. Everyone may not be our best friend, but just because somebody is our best friend doesn't mean we can't trade, right? So I think as long as the trade routes are open, which they are today, yes, there is a risk. Yes, we have to de-risk, but in the short term, we have a way forward.
So tell me with your experience, you have done business with more than 70 plus countries is what I last read. I'm sure that there are more. How do Chinese think? Because is business a priority over geopolitics for them? Or geopolitics is a priority and will they ignore the market of 1.4 billion because they want to be the only tiger sitting in Asia? Or they're going to be equally practical and they're going to let economics decide the geopolitics?
Well, let's look at what history has shown us. We have enough Indian businesses in China. Likewise, we have enough Chinese businesses in India.
Yeah.
And I think everyone is doing business fairly. The Chinese are doing business fairly in India. The Indians are doing business fairly in China. Where we are competitive, we win business there. Where they are competitive, they win business here. So that's pure economics, which is driving the equation. So I think what I've seen so far, that part is working well. Whenever I've gone to China, they have been incredibly welcoming because at the end of the day, everyone recognizes that there's mutual benefit when it comes to business. And likewise, for the Chinese businesses, I'm sure that they feel that their executives are equally welcomed when they come to India. So I think as far as both countries are concerned, we are very pragmatic. India is a large customer for China, or at least we believe so. So therefore, as I said, that we don't have to like each other to the extent that we're going to get married, but we can always like each other to the extent that we remain friends and we can do business with each other and we can trade with each other. And as far as China is concerned, it is an important trading partner for India today.
So you think that they will prevail economics over geopolitics?
I mean, as far as, as far as economics is concerned, let's see what's happened, over the last 75 years. I mean, over the last 30, 40 years, business has been there both sides of the border. People have been welcomed on both sides. Yes, there are points in time when there is friction. All of that has been happening, but that is part of life.
But balance
even with your best friends, you sometimes fight, All that happens.
But do you think balance sheets will take a priority over the maps and the borderlines?
You can never say what's going to happen in the future, but I think as things stand right now, I think, the way India's positioned itself as being very neutral, that's worked perfectly fine. You also know that we are a part of BRICS, right? And the C there is China. And, there's a BRICS summit later on this year, which India is going to play an important role in. So I think India is doing well.
Well, let's hope so the sanity prevails. I want to ask almost my final questions for this session. Only if you allow the next time also, right? On the AI front, what is your 5-point template for us to become a creator rather than just a consumer? Because we are great consumers, you said that. But I missed out on the part in case you said that how do we become a great creator? 5-point prescription, because that's what young people want from somebody as experienced as you. 5 things.
So I think, So I would say in terms of becoming a creator, I would like to encourage Indian developers to focus on open source based agents. I also want Indian developers to make sure that they don't tie themselves down to one OEM technology versus the other. This is what we have tended to do in the past, where we've gone and bet our whole house on one technology or another. I think this is the opportunity for us to be very neutral to all technology providers and not lock ourselves into anyone. The third, I would say, is that we should focus on inferencing, because that is where the biggest value is. Building models is exciting, but I think the bigger value is going to be around inferencing. And therefore, building AI agents which solve specific business use cases, which solve societal problems, should take preeminence over anything else. A lot of people turn around and say, oh, Manoj, but we don't have our own large language model. Yeah, that's interesting, that's fine, and so on. One day we are going to get there. But today, I think what is more important is how can we go build AI agents, leverage open source to the extent that we potentially can, build our orchestrators and make sure that we are solving real business problems. Because a country like India, if we have to move forward, we have to solve problems which are impacting our society, which are impacting our businesses. We need to do that and double down on that. So I would say that is where we need to focus and not lock ourselves in. We need to be very, very clear on that. So we should be independent of the LLM model. We should be independent of the hyperscalers or the cloud service providers who will obviously want us hooked on to the infrastructure layer of their choice. We need to be independent of that. And therefore, that will then allow us to be fungible when we start looking at a value proposition, and then nobody will be able to arm twist us in terms of moving in one direction or the other, and we will be able to capture value. Remember when I started, or during our conversation, we spoke about how value creation, we have not been able to keep it in our country. I think this time, the value that we create, let us make sure that we keep the margins in India and we keep the opportunity in India. We keep the IP in India.
So we want the strategic autonomy not only in geopolitics, but also in technology.
In technology, be neutral, don't get locked in. No matter how compelling a specific model looks like, no matter how compelling someone's commercial proposition looks like on the infrastructure side, be neutral.
Great. Let me ask you some final two questions. What is that is the most neglected big thing in India today? And what is that you would focus? And I think the answer could be the same for both, but I'll still ask you that. What is that you would today put all your muscle and experience and wisdom behind to make India Viksit Bharat in 2047?
I think it is just encouraging the youth to move to the next level. That's a big demographic dividend we have. And as you rightly said during our conversation, that could be a big drag on us as well. So we need to make sure that we motivate our youth, we provide the opportunity, we share with them, particularly experienced guys, we share with them all that we have learned so that based on our own experiences, they can make a meaningful livelihood for themselves and take this country to the next level. So I think our biggest advantage, taking on a cue from what you said, is our demographic dividend, but that can also be a big drag. So we need to get this right. And to my mind, that is where we need to focus a lot more.
And do you think that is where we are neglecting it the most?
No, I think we are trying to do our level best. The government has a number of skill development programs and so on. But I think everyone needs to come together.
Great, sir. Manoj, sir, it's been a wonderful afternoon for me on a Sunday, and I really appreciate it. And this is the first time I'm wearing a tie on my podcast because I wanted to mirror in some form with you, right? But we spoke about at geopolitics level, at industry level, at what needs to be done, at technology levels, how India should be absolutely neutral and have strategic autonomy, both in geopolitics and both in technology domain. And as I said at the beginning, I don't think there was anybody better than I could have spoken to you than you on this topic. So thanks a lot. I reached out to you just ad hoc, and you're here to oblige and share your knowledge, which otherwise wouldn't have come by reading even 3-4 books. So thanks a lot for that, sir.
Thank you very much, Manas. I've enjoyed the time that we've had together. Wish you all the very best. More power to you.
Thank you, sir.